Marilyn has been with UUCLR for 5 years and a member for 4. UUs light a flaming chalice to symbolize the creation of a reverent space for reflection, prayer, meditation, and singing.
I light this chalice with these words. Open our eyes to see what is beautiful. Open our minds to see what is true. Open our hearts to love one another. Please join me in the affirmation of the covenant, which you will find printed in your service, saying, Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to end that all souls shall grow in harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other.
I am really pleased to introduce to you Sylvia, Sylvia Blain. I was about to say Sylvia Plath. The poet was last week. So sometime around the mid-1990s, I attended a social event held at Trapnell Hall. The hosts were urging us to take home leftover food. There was so much, including large platters of untouched finger food. Afraid that all that food would end up in the trash, I asked the caterers what they would do with it. And that's when I first heard about Potluck Food Rescue. Sylvia Blain is the executive director of Potluck Food Rescue, a position she has held since 2017. She grew up in Fort Worth, another Texan, and graduated from UA Little Rock with a degree in sociology and anthropology. Her work history has been varied, including time as a cocktail waitress at the Capitol Hotel, where she was expected to keep an eye on Hunter S. Thompson, a task which she says she failed. Her next positions include plant department manager, buyer at Tipton Hearst, as the executive director of the Dunbar Garden Project, a contractor for the National Sustainable Agricultural Coalition, contractor for the Heifer Project International, executive director of the Arkansas Local Food Initiative, administrative coordinator for tourism, and executive director of the Arkansas Brewers Guild. In October of 2021, she told Arkansas Business that she was a product of the gig economy. She learned to put all that experience into one bag and create a focus, which she says was a paradigm shift for her. Obviously, she has a wealth of experience and a broad view of issues of food and food availability. Please welcome Sylvia Blain.
Thank you so much. I'd almost forgotten that I did all of those things. Again, thank you for having me, and thank you for rescheduling. I was supposed to be here back in the fall and got COVID, and so I had to cancel. So thank you for extending me the grace and rescheduling, and for continuing to extend me the grace, because I am not a skilled public speaker. So this is good practice for me. I am happy to be back here at UUCLR. I have participated in a few events and discussions on sustainability within these walls, and it's always a welcoming place to be. During my time with Dunbar Garden, as we mentioned, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Dunbar Garden, but it's a local small food production where we taught more than 800 kids a month about food production and the environment. During my time with the Dunbar Garden, I was privileged to plan a conference for young adults involved in urban food production from across the country. And this was in the early 2000s. The conference was a focus on local food systems and the importance of building a local food economy and supporting local farmers and the role those kids could play in that effort. And to be clear, those kids were from all over the country. They were from Chicago, they were from New York State, California. We had kids up from Ecuador. So we had about 100 kids, and they were all between the ages of about 14 and 20. We planned visits to area gardens, to Heifer Farm, other urban food production spots in the area. And in those days, it was not as, those kinds of organizations were not as plentiful as they are now. It is easy to take for granted that it has taken us a very long time to build the local food economy that we currently enjoy. We convened with these promising kiddos to talk about the issues they all face in their respective locales, trying to sustain small farm food production and the characteristics of their local food systems, and to do some problem solving and bonding over shared experiences. In the planning of this conference, I ran into a roadblock trying to walk the walk. I could not find local kitchens that would provide meals for us using locally sourced food. The hotel we were using to house the kids would not bring in local vendors because they had not been vetted and fully approved by their distributor. The caterers we approached weren't willing to look for local sources for many of the items they used regularly, as they were worried that it would add to their food costs. Here I was, preaching the gospel of supporting local farmers, building local food economies in every conversation we were having with these kids, while being unable to live our convictions in real time. And believe me, they'll call you on it. It was a conundrum. So after some thought, I decided to make the problem a part of our discussion, to make it a teaching moment. It was a lesson in the importance of making choices that move the needle, even if those choices are difficult, and if you have to compromise. We eventually found a couple of caterers that would prepare meals for us that we could feed our kids either at Dunbar Garden or in a park or somewhere else outside, because at that time, restaurants and hotels would not let us bring food in from the outside. It was harder to plan, it was more expensive, and more difficult to execute. The meals were well received, and we highlighted the effort it took to make them a reality. The kids learned how to make choices and demands of the food system that would serve as a model for future event planners. The choices we made in planning that event did have an impact on local farmers, participating caterers, and even on the groups that turned us down, as they were able to witness how we made that happen. I can say proudly that in today's world, you can order locally produced food from area food distributors like Benny Keith and PFG. You can find a local restaurant or caterer that will honor your request to keep your ingredients as local as possible. And you can request many hotel and food beverage departments to source locally for your event. I cannot take credit for moving the needle on those things alone with my group of kids in urban ag, but I will say that each and every effort and every choice you make creates a ripple of change. Your choices matter. The title of this presentation, Food Systems and Choices We Make. I think it's important that we define what a food system is so that we're all on the same page. A food system is a complex network of people, resources, and activities that are involved in producing, processing, distributing, consuming food. It includes all the steps and actors involved in getting food from farm to plate. This includes everything from farming, fishing, processing, marketing, packaging, transportation, consumption, and waste management. I'm going to give you another term that is new to me. Many of you may already know this term, but I believe that it ties into the seventh principle, the respect for the interdependent web of all existence in which we are part. And I'm focusing on the interdependent web in this part. But the word is holon, H-O-L-O-N. I believe there's a city in Israel also with the same name. But it's a philosophy, and it means holons express the complexity in relationships between the part and the whole in biological and social systems. A holon is something that has integrity and identity while simultaneously being a part of a larger system. A good illustration of this is, do seeds produce trees, or do trees produce seeds? It's both. There's truth in both of those things. Because trees and seeds is an example of a holon. As an undergrad student, I studied human food systems, both from an anthropological perspective and a sociological perspective. I discovered that our modes of transportation and the infrastructure to support them were determined by our need for food, Our roads, river systems, rail, and even the placement of our cities as they relate to that infrastructure were determined by our choices in how to transport food. If you look even further back into our collective human history, you will see that our food choices determine the path of our human skeletal evolution, our drive to walk upright, the shape of our heads, our jaws, our teeth, our digestive system, all relate to our food choices. It can be argued with some confidence that our choice to include meat in our diets had an impact on the imbalance in the equality of the sexes. The value of meat proteins and the evolution of modern agriculture made owning land a source of political and social power, creating an even larger gap in gender equality. I could go on, but you get the idea. Our food choices matter. They matter at a molecular level, on our social and ecological systems. We all eat several times a day if we are lucky. With each meal, we make a vote of confidence for the system that supported that food. We put money in the pockets of grocers, food distributors, farmers, laborers, municipal water supplies, on and on. They take our participation in that system as an implicit approval of and confidence in the system that produced it. If you choose locally raised small farm produced eggs over conventionally produced eggs, you have indicated to the market a preference. You have validated a particular system. I used to teach our kids at Dunbar Garden that they have the power. They have power in their community. They can have a positive impact on their neighbors by purchasing food for them. They can have a positive impact on the environment by making ecologically sound food choices. These are powerful lessons in how to move the needle with what seems like a mundane daily decision. The problems we are working to solve in our world are often too large to grasp. How can I make a difference? Will my food choices really make a difference? Yes, unequivocally yes. I want to take a moment to recognize that this sort of conversation is often considered one of privilege. If you are low income, you are short on time for food preparation, your food choices are limited. There's no doubt. But you are not powerless to make choices that benefit yourself, your family, your community, and the environment. You simply have to focus on one or two choices that you do have control of, and then build from there. My own personal experience with that as a single low-income mother of two, going to college full-time, was to choose one item on my grocery list. One item was milk. It was milk for me. I learned a little bit too much about milk production, became alarmed, and decided that I needed to start buying organic. It was more expensive, but it was only one item on my grocery list, and it was a start. After several months, as my budget and my habits had adapted to that change, I made other incremental changes. We ate more beans, we ate less meat, we bought more veggies from the farmer's market when they were in season, and ate fewer processed snacks. I worked on building the habit of carrying my own grocery bags to the store. I am quite honestly still working on that. Came up a little short yesterday. I try to buy fewer foods packaged in plastic and styrofoam. Most of these choices didn't cost me any more money, but it did require focus and commitment and sometimes a little more time. Making your choices count is within your power, wherever you are on the economic scale, but it does take a thoughtful and dedicated approach. As our climate continues to heat up and the impacts of that warming grow more frequent and severe, farmers and farm communities around the world will be increasingly challenged, and U.S. farmers will not be spared the damage that climate change is already beginning to inflict. In fact, the industrial model that dominates our nation's agriculture, a model that neglects soil, reduces diversity, and relies too heavily on fertilizers and pesticides, makes U.S. farms susceptible to climate impacts in several ways. That brings me back to the word hold on. Is climate change having an impact on farming, or is farming having an impact on climate change? Both. Both of those things are happening. I do not want to make the modern farmer the enemy. It is not my intention. I have a great respect and reverence for farmers and farming in this country. I come from a farm family, a cattle ranching family in Texas. But we do have an industrial agriculture system in the U.S. that is part of the climate crisis. I want to reiterate, we choose the food system we wish to see with every meal we prepare. We tell our farmers what is important to us with every dollar we spend. Wendell Berry said, "We are all farmers by proxy." For the last 5 years, I have been at the helm of an organization here in Central Arkansas called Potluck Food Rescue. I was going to play a video. I don't think we have it, do we, Chad? That's okay. So this gives me a minute. It's about a minute-long video, so I'm going to take a minute. The video was going to explain what Potluck Food Rescue is, and so I will do that in this minute. Potluck Food Rescue is a 34-year-old organization, and I'm a little surprised a lot of people don't know who we are, what we do, since we've been around that long. We take excess food and we redistribute it to hunger relief agencies, to churches, to schools, to feed people, period. I mean, that is the simple and elegant explanation for what we do, and we do that free of charge. Since 2019, our video that was created in 2019, and that it was going to give you some statistics, and so I'll update those statistics since we don't have to watch that. But in 2022, we diverted 430,000 pounds of food from the landfill. That is no small thing. We provided it to agencies that feed the hungry, and we composted a little more than 2 tons of food waste. We accomplished that with 3 employees, 2 vans, and about 65 regularly participating food donors. That is the tip of the iceberg in our tiny little corner of the world. Can you imagine the impact we would have if every restaurant, grocer, and food distributor in this county made the choice to participate in our food recovery program? Or better yet, every food retailer and commercial kitchen in the world decided that food waste was as important a problem to solve as cutting food costs. Nearly 40% of the food we produce in the United States is wasted. When you consider that 34 million people in the United States are food insecure, it seems to me that food waste is an ethical and moral failing. But what can we do? This discussion is about your personal choices related to the food system. We first have to consider the impact of food waste on hunger and on the environment. Along with chronic poverty, conflict, and natural disaster, food waste is one of the root causes of hunger worldwide. But wasted food isn't just a social or humanitarian concern. It is an environmental one. When we waste food, we also waste all of the energy and water it takes to grow, harvest, transport, and package it. And if food goes to the landfill and rots, it produces methane, a greenhouse gas even more potent than carbon dioxide, 28 times more potent than carbon dioxide. EPA data shows that food waste is the single most common material landfilled and incinerated in the U.S. I'm going to read that sentence again because it's kind of hard to believe. EPA data shows that food waste is the single most common material landfilled and incinerated in the United States, comprising 24 and 22% of landfilled and combusted municipal solid waste, respectively. Reducing and preventing food waste can increase food security, foster productivity and economic efficiency, promote resource and energy conservation, and address climate change, which in turn could also decrease climate change-related shocks to the supply chain. And we have all been experiencing supply chain shocks. What can you do? You can make a personal choice that makes a big difference and set an example for your friends and family to follow. You can compost food scraps. You can store and eat your leftovers. You can turn leftovers into new meals. You can encourage the retailers you frequent for groceries and meals to donate and compost their excess food. If you are unable to compost your food at home, you can participate in composting programs or feed your excess to animals. Find a farmer friend. Let your restaurateurs know that food waste is an important issue to you. Let your grocers know the same. Reward them with public praise and repeat business. It's important. Let your legislators know that food waste is preventable and should be an issue that is on their radar. You're going to start hearing more and more about food waste. The EPA has set new food waste goals. The USDA has set new food waste goals. And we are starting to see it at the city level and in our municipal waste streams. There are going to be limits set on how much food waste can be sent to the landfill. Organizations like mine are going to be taxed with figuring out how to manage all of that food waste. So you can support us. That's another choice that you can make. You'll begin to hear more and more about food waste as our world governments work to mitigate the effects of climate change. Eradicating food waste worldwide is the simplest and fastest method of both reducing hunger and greenhouse gas emissions. It is a simple solution to some very, very complex problems. To quote Wendell Berry once more, the old and honorable idea of vocation is simply that we each are called by God, by our gifts, or by our preferences to a kind of work for which we are particularly fitted. I have been blessed or lucky enough to stumble my way through a professional career that keeps me deeply rooted in the food system. I work closely with chefs, farmers, grocers, distributors, teachers, and environmentalists. My children are a chef and a grocer. All of us are making choices each and every day that have an impact on the complex systems around us. This sort of daily incremental activism is key to our collective success. I hope that you're able to take something from this presentation with you to make some impactful changes of your own. Our environment and our success depends on it. Thank you.
And Marilyn, will you come and extinguish our chalice? Oh, it extinguished itself. Well, she'll do the little one. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Go now in peace. And we have plenty of time, so go talk and get coffee, and let's think about this.